Your entire life has been a lie, and you never even realized it. From the day you were born, something has been hidden from you. A truth so vast, so powerful, that it could completely change the way you see everything you've ever lived. But no one ever wanted you to find out. You feel it, don't you? You've always felt it. Since childhood, it seemed like the world around you was out of sync. While other children lived carefree, you carried a weight you couldn't explain, an invisible pain and emptiness you couldn't share. But why? Why was your childhood so different? Why did it feel like no one understood you? Like no one saw what you saw? Like no one felt what you felt? The answer has always been right in front of your eyes, but you never noticed. What was done to you as a child was not a coincidence. Every hardship, every moment of loneliness, every doubt, it was all part of something much greater. You were shaped in silence, tested without warning, trained without knowing. Because those who are chosen never have a normal childhood. They are forged in pain before they even know who they truly are. And now, think about this. How many times have you tried to be like everyone else, but something inside you wouldn't let you? How many times have you wondered why some people seem to move through life effortlessly while you battle storms no one else seems to see? That was never a mistake. That was a sign. Now you have two choices. Leave this video and continue living without knowing the truth, or keep watching and finally understand why everything happened the way it did. But if you choose to stay, be ready, because what I'm about to tell you may change everything. And once you know, there will be no turning back. While other children lived an ordinary childhood, you always felt like something was off. From an early age, there was a feeling inside you, a restlessness that never left you alone. You looked at the world around you and felt like you didn't belong. It was as if you were in the middle of a game where everyone knew the rules, except you. Nothing seemed easy. Nothing seemed simple. You saw the world differently. But why? You noticed it early on. While others seemed to move through childhood effortlessly, you carried an invisible weight on your shoulders. It was more than just responsibility. It was something greater, something you couldn't explain. While other children were concerned with toys and play, you carried pains and thoughts too heavy for your age. You saw suffering where no one else did. You felt the energy of people, even when they tried to hide it. And for some reason, you seemed to absorb the pain of the world. And the strangest part? You tried to fit in. You tried to be like them. But it never worked. There was always an invisible wall between you and everyone else. You saw people, but no one truly saw you. You spoke, but it was as if no one really listened. You tried to be part of something, but deep down you always knew you were alone. Maybe it was your family. Maybe you grew up in a home where love and pain walked hand in hand. Maybe it was school, where you noticed things no one else did. Maybe it was that constant feeling that no one understood you, no matter how much you tried to explain. And then, one day you just stopped trying. You accepted that you were different, that you would always be different. But what if I told you that this was never a mistake? What if this feeling, this difference, this loneliness, was always a sign? From the very first day, your life was designed to be different because you were never meant to be ordinary. From the beginning, everything that happened to you was preparation. Now look back. Remember the moments when you felt invisible, the times you tried to speak but no one listened, the nights you stared at the ceiling, wondering why you felt so much, why it hurt so deeply. That was never a coincidence. That was never injustice. It was the universe shaping you, preparing you for something far greater. How many times have you wondered if something was wrong with you? If feeling everything so intensely was a mistake? If you were destined to live a lonely life? But what if I told you that all of this was a test? That the chosen ones must learn to walk alone before they can guide others? Now connect the dots. Do you really think it was all by chance? That it was just a coincidence that you always saw beyond the obvious? That you felt what no one else did? That you experienced what no one else lived? None of this was a mistake. Your childhood was a training ground. And now, you're beginning to understand why. But there's something no one ever told you. Something that explains why your life was different. Why certain doors never opened for you, and why, even now, you feel like something is missing. What once seemed like your greatest weakness might actually be the strongest proof that you were always meant for something greater. And if you think this explains everything, just wait until you hear what comes next. Because this is the part they never wanted you to discover. From an early age, there was something about you that didn't quite fit. You noticed things others ignored. You felt emotions that seemed too intense. While other children went through life without questioning much, you were always watching, always trying to understand a world that somehow felt strange and distant. You always knew there was something different about you. But what exactly did it mean? Sign number 1. You always felt out of place. No matter where you were, at school, at home, at family gatherings, there was always an unsettling feeling that you didn't belong. While others talked about trivial things, it felt as if they were speaking a language that made no sense to you. You tried to blend in, tried to laugh at the same jokes, tried to care about the same things, but deep down, you knew you were pretending. There was something inside you that set you apart. Maybe you were the child who preferred being alone, lost in your own thoughts. Maybe you were the one who, even surrounded by people, felt an inexplicable loneliness. You could be in the middle of a crowd, yet it was as if you were living in a completely different world. And the strangest thing? Others noticed it too. They could sense something about you, even if they couldn't explain what it was. Some people kept their distance, others labeled you as different. From an early age, life showed you that you weren't like everyone else. But why? Sign number 2. You had prophetic dreams or unexplainable feelings. Since childhood, your mind seemed to capture things no one else did. Maybe you had dreams that felt too real, dreams that later on actually happened. Or maybe you had that strange intuition, that deep certainty that something was about to occur, and somehow it did. Remember that time you felt a sudden heaviness in your chest for no reason, only to later find out that something bad had happened to someone close to you? Or that moment when you just knew, without any logical explanation, that you shouldn't take a certain path, only to realize later that you had avoided trouble? That was never a coincidence. You had access to something others didn't, a sensitivity beyond the ordinary, an invisible radar picking up what was hidden. But instead of seeing it as a gift, the world made you believe it was just your imagination. You may have been taught to ignore these perceptions, to reject your own instincts, but now you're starting to realize that none of it was random. Sign number 3. You were more sensitive and perceptive than other children. Since childhood, you felt things differently. The emotions of those around you hit you like invisible waves. You could enter a room and before anyone even spoke, you already knew when something was wrong. If someone was lying, you felt it. If someone was sad but trying to hide it, you knew. While other children seemed carefree, unaware of what was happening around them, you noticed everything. The small details, the subtle expressions, the shifts in tone. You always knew when something wasn't right, even if no one told you. But the problem was that most of the time, no one believed you. They said you were dramatic, too sensitive, that you were seeing things that weren't there. But deep down, you knew it was real. If you've always felt like you understood things, in a way no one else around you did, that was never a mistake, it was a sign. And now comes the most unsettling part. If you resonated with these signs, just wait until you hear what comes next, because this might change everything. There was a moment when your life took a sudden turn. Maybe it was a loss that left a void no one could ever fill. Maybe it was a trauma that marked you in a way no one else could understand. Or maybe it was an overwhelming loneliness, a crushing silence that made you question if anyone truly cared. Something happened. Something broke you from the inside. And from that moment on, everything changed. Until then, you were still trying to fit in, still trying to believe you were like everyone else. But after that, something inside you shattered. You stopped looking at the world with innocence. You stopped believing that life was fair. You stopped waiting for someone to save you. And without realizing it, that was when your true awakening began. Do you remember the exact moment? That instant when it felt like the world was collapsing around you? Your heart raced. The air became heavy. It was as if something had been ripped away from you, as if life had been turned upside down without warning. You tried to understand, tried to find a reason, but all you found was silence, a crushing emptiness that no one else could see but you. That was when you learned to survive on your own. That was when you realized no one was coming to rescue you, that no one had the answers you were searching for. You understood that if you wanted to find meaning in all of this, you would have to do it by yourself. You closed yourself off. You became stronger. You built walls. And without knowing it, you were being shaped for something much greater. Maybe it was the loss of someone you loved. Maybe it was abandonment, betrayal, or a shock so great that it made you see life in a way you never had before. You felt anger, You felt injustice. You wondered why this was happening to you. But over time, something even more terrifying happened. You stopped feeling. You got used to the pain. What once made you cry no longer caused any reaction. You learned to pretend everything was fine, to smile when you had to answer, "I'm fine." Even when you felt an abyss inside you, you became good at hiding, good at masking, good at moving forward, as if nothing had happened. And that numbness started to change you. Slowly, you became someone who no longer trusted people. You learned not to expect anything from anyone. You built a fortress around yourself. Maybe you started rejecting help, isolating yourself. Maybe you convinced yourself that it was better this way, that it was safer not to rely on anyone. But deep down, one question never left you. Why did this happen to me? And what if I told you that this event was no accident? That this pain, this collapse, this loss didn't happen to destroy you but to transform you? What if, in reality, this moment was the trigger the universe used to activate something inside you? Because the chosen ones never awaken in calm waters. They don't discover who they truly are in times of peace. They need to be tested. They need to be pushed to their limits. They need to have everything ripped away so they can finally see beyond what was imposed on them. Now stop and think. What was the moment that changed everything for you? What was the pain that pulled you out of illusion and threw you into the darkness? That was the turning point. That was the moment when life asked you a silent question. Are you ready to discover who you really are? But what if I told you that all of this was only the first test, that what happened after was even more terrifying? If you think this is already hard to accept, what I'm about to reveal now may be even worse, because this is the truth no one wants you to know. What if I told you that nothing you went through was in vain, that your childhood was not a mistake but a secret training? You may have spent your entire life thinking it was bad luck, that the universe was against you, that maybe something was wrong with you. But what if, in reality, all of this was planned? Every pain, every challenge, every moment of loneliness, none of it was random. You were not forgotten or ignored, you were chosen. But to fulfill your mission, you first had to be shaped. Think carefully. Have you noticed how some people seem to have easy lives? How they navigate through existence, without major struggles, without questioning anything, without having to fight to survive? Now look at your life. Look at everything you've faced since childhood. The contrast is enormous, but why? Why do some people walk an effortless path while you were forced to carry burdens from such an early age? The answer is simple. Because you were never meant to live an ordinary life. You were trained, you were tested, you were prepared from childhood for something most people could never endure. Since you were young, you were taught to endure pain without complaining. You learned to fend for yourself. You learned to observe people and understand their intentions before they even spoke. You developed a sixth sense to detect lies, threats, and dangers. That was no coincidence. That was part of the training. Maybe you spent your entire childhood feeling different, but what no one told you is that the chosen ones are always isolated at first. They must learn to find themselves in the middle of chaos. They must be pulled out of comfort to develop the strength they will need for what comes next. You were tested to prove you were capable. And here's the hardest truth to accept. Many don't pass the test. Many get lost along the way. Many chosen ones never realize they were being trained and end up believing they were merely victims of life. They allow the pain to destroy them instead of letting it shape them. But what if I told you this was only the first level? That at every stage of your life you've been tested without even realizing it. Think carefully. The loneliness? It was so you would learn to seek answers within yourself. The betrayal? It was so you could develop a radar for those who want to deceive you. The losses? They were so you could detach from what was never truly yours. Every suffering you endured had a purpose, but you were so focused on the pain that you never noticed the lesson behind it. And the scariest part? You never had a choice. From the very first day, everything was being observed. You were studied, tested, pushed to the limit to see if you would endure. Now look at your life. Have you noticed how everything seemed to push you away from the normal path? How you were never able to just go with the flow like everyone else? That was no coincidence. That was part of the plan. You were programmed to question, to feel, to see beyond the surface. You were shaped to become someone who would never accept the illusion most people live in. And that is why you've always been different. That is why you never fit in. You were never meant to take the easy path. You were meant for something greater. But there's something even more terrifying. Something that could change everything you think you know about yourself. If you think this is shocking, what comes next might be even more disturbing. From the beginning, your life has been marked by challenges that seemed too great to bear. But what if I told you that none of it was a punishment? That every pain, every loss, every moment of solitude had a purpose far greater than you ever imagined? The chosen ones must be forged in fire. They are not born ready. They are shaped through pain, rejection, doubt, and isolation. They are tested from an early age to become strong enough for their mission. But why? Because there is no transformation without suffering. There is no growth without resistance. Think about the great spiritual leaders, the biblical figures who changed history. None of them had an easy journey. Joseph was sold by his own brothers and thrown into a pit before becoming the governor of Egypt. Moses was abandoned in a river before leading an entire people out of slavery. David faced giants, was hunted and humiliated before becoming king. Even Jesus was rejected, betrayed, and carried a cross before fulfilling his mission. Now look at your life. Do you really think it was any different? You went through so many trials not because you were forgotten, but because you were chosen. Because there is something inside you that needed to be awakened. And for that to happen, you had to be tested. Have you ever noticed that every time you overcame a difficult moment, something inside you changed? That every loss taught you a new truth? That every betrayal made you stronger? None of those pains were in vain. Each one was preparation. Life was teaching you, shaping you, preparing you for something that only now you are beginning to see. But here's the truth no one told you. Not all the chosen ones manage to awaken. Many get lost along the way. Many let pain destroy them instead of using it as fuel. Many go through life carrying the feeling that they are different, yet never discover why. Have you ever met someone who seemed destined for something great, but lost their way? People who at some point gave up on themselves and started living on autopilot? Maybe you've seen friends, family members, or even strangers who had a different kind of light inside them, but for some reason, abandoned their path. Time is passing, and the more you ignore the signs, the harder it will be to return to the right path. The chosen ones who do not awaken end up trapped in a reality that does not belong to them. They feel that something is wrong but cannot explain what it is. They live unsatisfied, searching for answers in the wrong places, trying to fill a void that never disappears. But you made it this far. You survived. You still feel that calling inside you. That means there is still time. But before you decide what to do next, you need to understand one last thing, something that could change everything you thought you knew about your destiny. From the beginning, you felt different. You felt that there was something more, something you could not explain. But now comes the most dangerous part, because not all the chosen ones make it to the end. Not all of them awaken. Many get lost along the way. Many allow the distractions of the world to silence the calling inside them. And this is the greatest risk you can face, to have been chosen, but never fulfill your mission. You've seen it happen. People who seem to have a different glow, a heightened sensitivity, a grand destiny, but somehow they strayed from their path and never returned. And believe me, this can happen to anyone. The first great danger is getting lost in materialism and forgetting your mission. Many chosen ones, without realizing it, become trapped in a routine where everything revolves around money, status, and superficial achievements. They begin to believe that success is only in what they can touch, buy, or accumulate. And little by little, they lose touch with who they really are. There is nothing wrong with wanting comfort. There is nothing wrong with seeking stability. But what if it is blinding you? What if, in chasing a false sense of security, you are ignoring the real reason you are here? Have you noticed how the world pushes you toward this? How everything seems designed to distract you from what truly matters? Many chosen ones are lost this way. They feel there is something more, but they bury that feeling beneath work, worries, and excessive consumption. And one day they realize they spent their entire lives chasing things that never brought them real satisfaction. The second great danger is allowing yourself to be consumed by the suffering of the past. Chosen ones often carry deep wounds. They have been tested since childhood, have faced loss, rejection, and injustice. And for many, these pains have never fully healed. And here lies the risk. You could spend your whole life looking back, reliving the same pains, the same traumas, asking yourself why it happened, feeling wronged, trapped in something that should have been left behind long ago. But here is the truth. As long as you are looking at the past, you will never be able to see the future. You cannot change what happened, but you can decide what you will do with it. Will you remain a prisoner of your pain, or will you transform it into strength? Will you carry your wounds forever, or will you wear them as the scars of a warrior who survived? But the third danger is the most silent, and therefore the most destructive. When a chosen one disconnects from their own spiritual sensitivity, they begin to die inside. At first, they feel the calling. They see the signs. They know there is something beyond this reality. But little by little, they stop listening. They begin to ignore. They start to believe that maybe it was all just coincidence. They begin to trust what the world tells them more than what they feel within. And without realizing it, they extinguish what made them unique. They drift away from their mission and become someone who lives on autopilot. And the most frightening part? Many chosen ones only realize they have strayed when they no longer feel anything. When the calling that once screamed inside them is now just a distant echo, they look back and wonder where they lost themselves. And often it is already too late, because the universe only calls a few times. After that, the silence can be eternal. But if you made it this far, there is still hope. Because as long as you are listening to this message, it means that something inside you has not given up yet. You can still return. And now I will show you the way. Throughout your life, you felt that there was something different about you, something that set you apart from the ordinary, that made the world around you feel out of sync. Now you finally understand why. Your pain had a purpose. Your challenges were training. Your path was never like everyone else's because you were never meant to live an ordinary life. You were chosen. But understanding this is not enough. Now you must make a decision. Awakening does not happen by accident. You will not simply wake up one day and suddenly be living your mission. You must act. You must make the conscious decision to reconnect with what has always been inside you. But how do you do that? How do you break free from inertia and step onto the path that has always been yours? There are 3 essential steps to awakening your mission. The first step is to silence the world and listen to yourself. For years, you were taught to doubt what you feel, to ignore your intuition, to believe that the only answers exist outside of you. But the chosen ones do not find their mission in the noise of the world. They find it in silence. You must step away from distraction, reduce the noise, create moments to connect with yourself, whether through prayer, meditation, or solitude. The more time you spend in silence, the clearer your mission becomes, because the truth has always been within you. It was only drowned out by the chaos around you. The second step is to heal the wounds that keep you tied to the past. As long as unresolved pain remains inside you, your awakening will be incomplete. You cannot fulfill your mission if you still carry resentment, guilt, fear, or bitterness. The chosen ones must be free, and that means letting go of everything that no longer serves you. Pain has taught you, but it can no longer control you. You cannot change the past, but you can decide that it will no longer have power over you. The moment you choose healing, you choose awakening. The third step is to accept the calling without fear. Many chosen ones feel the truth inside them but hesitate. They sense that something great is waiting for them, but they don't believe they are ready. They wait for the right moment. They wait for another sign. They wait until they feel prepared. But that is the biggest mistake they can make. The calling never comes when you're ready. It comes to make you grow, to pull you out of your comfort zone. You don't need to have all the answers right now. You just need to take the first step, and the path will reveal itself as you walk. But there is something even more important. Time is passing. You can feel it. You can sense that a moment of decision is approaching. Either you awaken now or you risk spending your entire life postponing your mission. And do you know what the greatest regret of those who got lost is? The feeling that they knew all along, but didn't have the courage to act. So look around. Look at the signs that have always been in front of you. Look at everything that brought you here. This is not a coincidence. You did not find this message by accident. The universe is waiting for your response. Now you have a choice. You can ignore this truth and continue living as before. Or you can accept your calling and finally become who you were born to be. What will you do with this truth? By now you understand that nothing was random. You have realized that your childhood was not a mistake, that your pain was not a punishment, that every obstacle you faced was a test. But now comes the most important moment. The moment when you need to look inside yourself and answer a decisive question. Are you ready for your mission? Before you answer, think carefully, because this answer cannot be taken lightly. It's not just about wanting it. It's not just about feeling special. The chosen ones are not only those who have a calling, they are those who choose to answer that calling no matter what. Are you truly willing to do whatever it takes? Are you ready to leave the past behind? Or are you still holding on to old pains, resentments, and frustrations that keep you trapped like invisible chains? Because as long as you continue carrying those wounds as a burden, your mission will remain on hold. The chosen ones must be free to move forward. Are you willing to free yourself? Are you ready to silence the world and listen to your own truth? Because most people spend their entire lives listening only to what others say, what society imposes, what the media repeats, what their family expects. But a chosen one must listen to themselves. They must trust their intuition more than anything else. Are you ready for that? Are you ready to let go of the need for control? Because this journey is not about knowing every step before taking the first one. It's about trust, about following the voice that calls you, even without seeing the full path ahead. Are you willing to step out of your comfort zone? Or will you keep waiting until everything feels perfect, even though you know that moment will never come? Are you ready to be rejected? Because not everyone will understand your transformation. Many will question you. Many will doubt you. Some will walk away. But the chosen ones know that their mission is greater than any external approval. Are you prepared to keep going, even when no one stands beside you? Now look within yourself. Take a deep breath. Feel this question echo inside you. Are you ready for your mission? Because if your answer is no, then perhaps this was your last chance to awaken. But if your answer is yes, then prove it. What will you do now? You have come this far. It was not by chance. Something inside you led you to this message. You felt the truth in every word because deep down this truth has always been inside you. Now there is no turning back. You have seen what you needed to see. You understand why your life was different, why the challenges were so intense, why you never fit in. You went through all of this because you had to awaken. And that moment has arrived. But there is something you must know. Simply knowing this is not enough. Many people feel the calling, but few truly answer it. Few have the courage to break, free from illusion, to break their chains, to abandon fear and follow the path that has always been theirs. And now, the final question is no longer whether you are ready. The question is, what will you do with this truth? Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath. Feel this truth inside you. Something has changed. You are no longer the same person who started this video. You can no longer ignore the voice that is screaming inside you. Now, you know there was always a reason, that all the pieces were falling into place, that every pain was a lesson, that every loss was a redirection, that every moment of loneliness was meant to make you stronger. But awakening is not just about seeing the truth. It is about acting on it. The time for waiting is over. The time for doubts has ended. Now is the moment when you decide whether you will continue living on autopilot or take the first step toward the life that was always meant to be yours. It doesn't matter what happened before. It doesn't matter how many times you ignored the signs. What matters is what you choose to do from this moment on. Now, the mission continues. It is no longer about what happened to you. It is about what you will do next. You can feel this change inside you. The awakening has begun, but a chosen one never walks alone. There are others who are still lost, others who feel the same way you did before you found this message. If this message awakened something inside you, write in the comments, "The chosen one has awakened." Declare it to the universe. Let this truth manifest. And now do something greater. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Be the voice that awakens another chosen one. The world needs more awakened souls. It needs more people who can see beyond the illusion. It needs you. You did not find this message by accident. Your awakening has begun. Now the world will see who you truly are.